this record is described as an arc of an entire relationship. And I read that you mentioned how you wrote like 25 songs like in a few weeks, like obviously at the time of the end of your marriage, would be the beginning of the end of your marriage. And I know that these past 3 years for you, you've talked about it a little bit, have been, to say the least, rough. Tell me about the writing process and how you just sat down and what came out of you that ended up on this record.
A lot of these songs, well, all of the songs were really written like 2.5 to 3 years ago, but a lot of these songs were written at like 35,000 feet in the air. And it was like I would go to work, and because we were still figuring out just custody stuff, right? And like and we want to make sure the kids are seeing both of us, whatnot. So it would be like me coming home from work. I was so tired. I was working all week long. And then right after work, I'd take my kids to the airport. I'd fly them to Montana. I'd have to fly back and then wake up at 6 something the next morning for work the next day. So I was very tired, one. I was exhausted emotionally, obviously. And I wrote most of those songs alone on those plane rides, just in the dark, on my iPhone, in my notes, with my voice memos. Like, I wrote literally almost every song like that. And just honestly crying. And it's very therapeutic for me. And it was just kind of figuring out, should I hold on and try more? Is this the point where you've tried enough? Like, it was honestly selfish. It was just writing because that's kind of my thing of, not just for music to release, but just for me to figure out, where am I at? Like, there's so much going on and there's so many voices in my head, of like, what to do, what not to do. God, I don't want to go through divorce. Like, I don't want my kids go, there's just all this stuff. Right. So it was just very therapeutic for me, and I was doing it for selfish reasons. And then I would come home and record it in my bathroom just to like have it, just to hold on to it so I could listen to it. And then it slowly ended up, like, maybe this is very relatable, and I think there's a reason for everything. And a lot of the songs did not make it because they're very literal. And I don't think that story needs to be out there. So I kept the songs that I felt like were broad enough that people, that weren't so pointed and literal, and that people, because I think the hard thing for me was, it's for everyone. Like, if you're going through something, no one knows your exact life. No one knows, like, even if my friends, as hard as they would try, no one knew what it was like to not only, because none of my friends are married with kids, for the most part. None of my friends are in the public eye, for the most part. And there were just so many things, like, that no one could relate to. So it's you feel very isolated and alone at a time when humanity felt isolated and alone because of COVID. So like, it was just a lot, like, all while trying to smile for America on TV. So it's, that was a lot. So that's why a lot of the songs, it's a very intense record. I probably shouldn't have called it the arc of a relationship, and I should have called it the roller coaster of a relationship, because that's literally what it does. And then the back and forth and the deciding and it was just a very intense roller coaster ride. So, and while those relationships can be exciting and sexy and intoxicating, they can be very detrimental and very just unhealthy. So, but yeah, most of those were written on a plane. Yeah, just through tears. So
I wonder how you a couple months ago we had Jason Sudeikis on the show talking about working on a show that is so joyful and so lovely, and also working through a very public and just the challenge of being a public person and having a very private thing happen. And by the way, something that happens to hundreds of thousands of people every year, marriages,
unfortunately, statistically,
relationships. And most people can handle that or can deal with that in private. But here you are the host of a show. It's a joyful show. You need to be there for the people there. And when you're struggling with, challenges in your own life, how do you do it? How do you just, I don't know, because you said 85% of it's, me and 15% of it's acting, but sometimes it has to be 50% of it is acting. I don't know.
Well, I mean, as like in a whole percentage. I mean, so out of that 15 percentage, that could have been like several days where 100% of the time I was just acting. And honestly, it's not so much for others. It is your job, so you show up and you do it. But honestly, it's very healing not to use it as escapism by any means, just to act and push it all down. But it's more of like, it was helpful in this sense, especially on my show. We're usually covering stories where we're showing just the excellence of humanity, like how people are killing it and like don't have a spotlight and should, and just really great humans. That is very healing. When you're living in just the eye of the storm and you cannot see outside of it. It was a beautiful thing to start out going, and I mean, my manager and executive producer will tell you there were many a days I would literally be bawling before with the first show, at lunch, at the end. Like it was like, and we just have to fix makeup and keep going because it matters. Like it wasn't like a light decision, like, and it matters and it hurts and I'm human. So, but I think going out there, getting that out and having that release with my inner group and being able to release that and then going out there and focusing on someone else and focusing on like, you know what, it's not all bad. Like we can do amazing things. We are capable of more than these moments, right? So that was very helpful. And I don't know for Jason, if it's because I watched Ted Lasso, like maybe that was therapeutic as well to like have to read those lines and have to believe them as an actor and I think that can be healing.
Yeah. I think so. I think so too. Making 180 shows a year is so much work and it requires so much mental and creative energy because you want to make every show different and you want to do something. It's a different live audience every week and every day, every episode, and you want them to and for most of those people, it's a one time they're going to see you and experience that. And so imagine you want them to feel like there was a connection there every time. How does that, right, the process of just creating all of those episodes and doing all that work and all that collaboration, how did that inform the way you thought about this record? Because it's different from your previous records. It sounds different, and you wanted it to sound different, I have to imagine. Well,
what's funny is I think, so I cover songs every day on the show, right? And I do all different kind of genres, and people are like, oh, what was the music you were listening to when making this album? And other than listening to just the karaoke's right before I sing them, literally, which goes well sometimes and doesn't others, I wasn't listening to anything. I was just listening to my feelings and selfishly, like there wasn't any records. Like I think you can honestly hear influences of mine, like from Green Day with like the chorus of Mine, very straight tone, very, gang vocal thing. From Mariah to Florence I think there are influences in there that Annie Lennox with like Magic, there's this whole part that reminds me of her Bear record. But anyway, I think that there's influences in there, but that was just all in the memory banks of like me growing up and loving music and listening. I wasn't listening to anything. I literally I'm able to compartmentalize so well. So like when I go to my show, I'm not thinking about my music, like music Kelly Clarkson at all.
Do you? How important do you think adversity is in writing? I mean, this record, you wrote this record at a really challenging time in your life, but at the same time, it kind of poured out of you, right? I mean, and I wonder whether, it's sort of strange to because it's obviously nobody wants to go through that, but at the same time,
no, tragedy sparks inspiration.
Sometimes, often it does.
And it's interesting because I I've always kind of thought that, even with like artists I've loved growing up. I mean, Jagged Little Pill, inspired by a tragedy, but
Touched by God, that
one
record,
of
right?
the greatest records ever made. So it's
Right.
like, so I think that that's true. Like, out of darkness comes light, right? So, but I also think like it was very important for me for this record to depict all the different ways that chemistry can affect you. So like, even with like Favorite Kind of High, that's not a dark song. That's like a song about the high of what lust, love, whatever you want to call the beginning of a relationship, right? Like all those things that you feel and the possibility and the opportunity and there's just, it's an open, you know, they're blank pages, right? So it's like exciting. So there's that on there that has nothing to do with tragedy. And I think it was important for me to do that too, because I wanted to point out on this record, it's not all bad, you know, like maybe it ended badly, but like it wasn't all bad. So I think it was very important for me. That's why I say the arc of a relationship or the roller coaster of it. I do think for the most part, that's artists. Like even like I bet when you look at artists that are painters or sculptors, I bet their best work was sometimes in tragic moments or chaotic moments in their life of figuring things out, because that's what we do. That's you getting it out. It's you that's your vessel, right? And people relate to that vessel because life isn't easy. Like life can be easy at times, but for the most part, you're working your ass off. Like for the most part, you're busting your ass to like get things done or have positive change. Like it's, you know, it's work. So so I do think that's true though. I think that, you know, a lot of times records that are the more real and raw and vulnerable you are, the better I mean, those in my career too are the ones like Because of You, like, you know, Piece by Piece. Those are the songs that really resonate too with fans. So like, I mean, I think it's connecting. It's us all connecting so you don't feel alone.
If you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire episode, click right here.